The International Fund for Agricultural Development (IFAD) is a specialized agency of the United Nations, formally established in 1977. The main objective of IFAD is to mobilize additional funds for agricultural development, enhancing nutrition for low-income groups in developing countries. IFAD officially cooperated with Vietnam 25 years ago. It says the project in Vietnam is typical of the relationship between IFAD and developing nations. Currently, IFAD is supporting 17 projects in Vietnam with a total value of about $500 million, including loans and grants, which are implemented in 11 provinces with particular focus on poor provinces and difficult mountainous areas. Hello and welcome back to Sharing Vietnam. After 25 years of working closely with Vietnamese government to improve the livelihoods of farmers, International Fund for Agricultural Development (IFAD) is focusing on increasing the competitiveness and value of agricultural products. And today, Mr. Thomas Rath, the country director of IFAD in Vietnam, will have a talk with us about their new strategy. Hello and thank you for joining our show today. Vietnam has experienced one of the most remarkable growth rate and poverty reduction over the past decades. So during 25 years working in Vietnam, how did you see the role of agriculture in this process?
Agriculture is a strong engine in poverty reduction and agriculture production, especially in Vietnam, but also globally. But Vietnam is an agriculture-based country, which has now developed also industries and so on. But still, agriculture counts for something like 20% of the total GDP, and half of agriculture's production goes to export.
I learned that you have come to Vietnam with vast experience, especially in rural development and agriculture from other developing countries. So what kind of practice and lesson Vietnam can learn from?
There are several. I think governance is very important, and it's actually pretty strong in Vietnam, governance. But governance needs to be well channeled to focus on what we call the rural poor, the smallholder farmers. Every government says we're doing it, but it requires tools and approaches that are especially tailored to the needs of the people. So in Vietnam, for example, you have the socio-economic development planning, and IFAD has in the last years assisted government to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of this socio-economic development planning. We have brought an element of being more market-oriented, of being more participatory, so that the planners can better listen and understand the voices of the target group, which is the poor smallholder producers. That they understand what they actually have to provide, and then link the institutions to them, linking the private sector to them, bringing the required technology and the research that underpins technology to those producers.
So how has IFAD adopted those experience in provincial plans such as the tea growing in Hà Giang province?
I think in Vietnam we have in the last 6 to 8 years focused much more on commercialization of smallholder farming as compared to other countries. The government is interested in bringing in its farmers to commercial levels. It has recognized that agriculture is an engine for development, and it requires all Vietnamese farmers to bring it in. In Hà Giang, we basically try to assist the local government in improving their planning processes, in bringing in infrastructure that is smarter, that is attached to the needs of the rural producers and the enterprises that are along the value chain. The value chain is basically, we're looking at the agriculture commodity, let's say tea, from the farmer's field to the processor to the consumer. So all the stages along. And then we look what is needed to improve each step, from production, processing to consumption, or selling and consumption. Is there any need? Are the services good enough? Is the technology good enough to bring more returns to the producers we are caring about? So it's not only improving the product, but it's also increasing the revenues to farmers. So if farmers get better technology, better planting materials, better contracts with the processors and buyers, they will gain. But if they get only technology and we forget about the marketing side, they will not gain. They will only produce more but maybe have less income.
Among the provinces in Vietnam benefiting from programs and projects funded by IFAD, Hà Giang is a typical case. The Commodity-Based Poverty Reduction or CPRP program has been implemented in the province for more than 3 years now.
Có thể nói là sau 3 năm triển khai thực hiện cái chương trình thì cái kết quả thực hiện chương trình trên địa bàn huyện Bắc Quang trên 4 xã là rất là rõ nét. Nói là cái kết quả về đầu tiên phải nói là về cái liên kết sản xuất giữa người dân và doanh nghiệp và thực hiện theo cái chuỗi giá trị. Cái nữa là cái cơ sở hạ tầng được đầu tư và cái nhóm sở thích cũng như là các cái nhóm tín dụng đã phát huy được cái hiệu quả. Đây là cách làm mới và cũng tạo cái đà cho người dân phát triển. Qua đó đã giúp cho các cái xã nghèo của huyện Bắc Quang phát triển sâu hơn, nâng cao hơn về mặt giá trị về các cái sản phẩm chủ lực của các xã, ví dụ như chè.
The 5-year tea production support project is implemented in 30 communes in 5 districts of Hà Giang province with a total budget of more than $33 million, of which the preferential ODA loan from IFAD is $20 million. The main objective of the project is to develop a sustainable market orientation, invest in a commodity development in line with the poor farmers. Up to now, after more than 3 years of implementation, the project has achieved positive results with many households escaping from poverty. Both the quantity and quality of tea product have increased.
Bản thân tôi thì cũng là năm 2015-16 đấy, trước khi vào dự án vẫn là hộ nghèo. Đấy thì chuyển sang thì tôi cũng thoát nghèo từ năm 2017 rồi, thì giờ tôi cũng rất mong muốn là dự án chương trình để mẹ quan tâm hơn nữa để hỗ trợ thêm, xem còn tài trợ thêm để cho nhóm tôi để phát triển thêm nữa, để nhân rộng cái vườn chè ra.
Nhìn chung là sau khi tham gia vào dự án này nó có nhiều những cái thuận lợi cho cơ sở chúng tôi. Ví dụ như là cái độ kết nối giữa cơ sở chúng tôi với những người trồng chè, rồi những cái tổ sở thích ấy, thì nó đảm bảo hơn. Mà cái nguyên liệu đầu vào của chúng tôi là nó có cơ sở để mình chắc chắn.
With new approach, the project has succeeded in connecting small farmers to each other and to the market, encouraging farmers to learn new knowledge and new technologies to improve their livelihoods. This is also the goal that the government of Vietnam aims to develop agriculture rural sustainably in the new context. And I learned that one of the main targets set by IFAD program is to increase the competitiveness and value of agricultural products and value chains. So what kind of strategy and innovation that IFAD plans to deploy in order to achieve the goal?
We are applying a mix of approaches, which is provision of technology, provision of finance, linking, organizing farmers into farmers groups, linking them to lead enterprises, providing the right infrastructure for transport, for processing, for selling, and looking at the resilience of the system. So many places where poor farmers are living are vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So we're also trying to make the production climate smart.
And I learned that innovation and knowledge management is considered the key on programs designed by IFAD in Vietnam. So can you share with us a little bit more about this aspect?
IFAD is not only about bringing finance and bringing skills, it's actually about bringing knowledge from global practice, from other countries. And that is where the difference is that we have with maybe other financial institutions or development partners. And now with the new structure being more decentralized to what we call sub-regional offices, we embrace from this office the whole Mekong area and try to bring in all the stakeholders on a regular basis to exchange on knowledge, on innovations that can help smallholder farmers, poor smallholder farmers, to improve production, to gain higher incomes, to have a more resilient and robust farming systems. So this is something where a cross-border learning, a regional learning is very important, and IFAD is actually going into this direction, bringing countries together. We call it South-South cooperation, so that countries in the southern hemisphere, very globally speaking, actually learn from each other, not only within the Mekong region, not only within Asia, but also across the continents. We have a South-South triangular cooperation program.
Then from your experience, what is your recommendation to attract more private investors?
The private sector in Vietnam has an increasingly important role. It starts usually in the cities, then goes out to the rural areas around the cities or the urban centers. But now, through the projects, we're trying to give incentives to private sector to come even to areas like Ha Giang, but they have pristine production conditions. Their products are growing the farmers' products are growing in a wonderful natural environment, which consumers appreciate. So the private sector, together with the farmers, can actually, if they work closely together, they can actually develop a market niche for the product, like the tea from Ha Giang. Yeah, we made the experience that private sector is very comfortable to engage in a project or program that IFAD is supporting, where IFAD stands behind, because they know with IFAD there come new approaches, innovations to the farmers. And IFAD can help to bridge the contact between government and the private sector. So it's a kind of a tripartite agreement. We make sure that things are working and bringing the innovations to it. And that makes private sector more comfortable.
And what is the strategy of IFAD in Vietnam for the coming years?
In the coming years, because of the changing context of agriculture development, of economic development in Vietnam, we also have to adapt to this. We will focus on helping government to introduce smart agriculture. Smart agriculture will entail to mobilize more private sector investments in agriculture. IFAD will help to support this with public investments in infrastructure or in financial or technical aspects where it's possible. The second point is to render farming systems more resilient. If you look at the Mekong Delta, there the context changes basically every day. Salinity is rising, farmers need to switch from rice production to other crops, to aquaculture, to coconut, to livestock. It requires a completely new skill set for them. And they will only do it, they will be only able to do it if they are helped, not only accessing the technology, but also accessing markets, because they need to sell, to pay for this change in production and to make a living from it. Otherwise they will move out of agriculture, and that would be bad for Vietnam.
Mr. Thomas, again, thank you for spending time with us today. And that's all for Sharing Vietnam today. Thank you for watching. See you next time.